roll call. Bill, would you mind doing a roll call?
Sure. Melissa Gavin.
Here.
Steve Douglas.
Here.
John Burant.
I'm here.
Kevin Thusias.
Here.
Michael Palmkowski.
Here.
Great. Thanks, everyone. We're all here. Tonight's agenda is as follows. We'll have some space for public comment. And I can't tell, Bill, do we have any members of the public for tonight's meeting?
We do not. No, we have County Executive Joe Parisi with us, and then Kathy Kuntz and Scott Adrian from the county.
Okay, terrific. And then we will, so we'll do a presentation tonight. I'm excited that tonight we have with us folks from the Dane County, and the Office of Energy, Climate, and Climate Change. And we're going to be hearing about Dane County's climate action plan. So I'm really excited to have folks join us and talk a little bit about what Dane County is doing for the climate action plan, so that we can be kind of mindfully incorporating that into our sustainability plan. And then we'll move on to general business, and we'll do some committee member report outs and look at the minutes from January, and then dive into the ongoing work of developing a sustainability plan for the village of Cross Plains. So with that, I'll pause again to see if anybody's joined us for public comment. And it doesn't look like anybody else has joined us. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a presentation by Kathy Kuntz and other folks from Dane County. So Kathy, do I give it to you, or Joe, do we hand it over to you?
Yeah, so I could go ahead and start. Kathy and I usually do this together, our little show, so I'm happy to start it off. First, let me just say thank you so much for allowing us to come and talk to you about this today. We are really excited about our climate action plan, and we get out every chance we can to talk to people about it, give a little history of how we got here and what we hope to accomplish, and to explore ways and open up that channel of communication with folks like you to see how we can work together to further, our goals of reducing carbon emissions in Dane County. So it's really great to be here. So our climate action plan, really the roots of this began almost 10 years ago now. When I became county executive, one of my passions at the time and remains was clean energy and dealing with environmental protection and addressing climate change. So one of the things we did early on was we partnered with the University of Wisconsin, and Kathy will talk a little about this a little more in depth in her part of the talk, to help us understand what we could expect locally from climate change. You know, we're all aware of the fires in Australia and California and hurricanes and all the things that we see about on the evening news. But as local government, we wanted to know what we had to be prepared for. And so the study was done, and they came and brought back to us basically what we've been seeing a lot more of the last few years. They told us we were going to have, more hot days in the summer, which is predictable, is what you would think from climate change, but also that we would receive increasingly heavy rain events. And not only more rain, but more rain at once in sustained downfalls rather than the soft soaking rains of my youth, at least. And so we would also see things like warmer and wetter winters. Ironically, as we're sitting here in a polar vortex, we're not seeing that today. But there's even evidence that this polar vortex is sometimes caused and exacerbated, like other natural phenomena, by climate change, because it begins with warmer weather moving in the polar regions and pushes down this region of cold air. So we wanted to know this for a few reasons. We wanted to incorporate what we had to expect into our daily operations. So we took that information and we had all of our departments, the Human Services Department, the Highway Department, Public Works, Emergency Management, incorporate those forecasts into their planning and into their continuity of operation plans that we have for everyone. And so, you know, unfortunately, a few years ago, we started seeing some of this in a big way, and no one knows better than Cross Plains the impacts that the floods had. And so we've been working, you know, to adapt in many ways, probably like Cross Plains has in other areas. You know, when we look at highways, you know, replacements using larger culverts, et cetera, and planning both there and in the human services and other areas and emergency services that could be impacted by these weather phenomena. So in addition to that, we started looking internally into county government operations to see how we could better not only prepare for the impacts of climate change, but how we could do a better job of reducing our carbon footprint and the manner in which we impact the climate. So we've done a number of things. As you may be aware, for years now, we've been extracting methane from, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas, as you're aware, from our landfill. And in the past, we used it to generate renewable electricity, which was a great deal for a while. It brought in dollars to the county. It reduced those greenhouse gas emissions. But as the cost of solar and wind has come down, you know, exponentially, what we've seen is the cost competitiveness of generating electricity from methane didn't keep up. And so we were losing our customers, and that was no longer a viable option. So we did a lot of exploring. We have incredibly talented staff at the landfill and public works, and they came back to us with a plan. And that plan was we needed to make a substantial investment, ended up being about $28 million, to create a plant at our landfill that would extract the methane and clean it and compress it. And fortunately for us, we are literally sitting on top of an interstate gas pipeline at the landfill. So the opportunity there was to take this gas and turn it into transportation fuel, which is something we had been doing on a limited basis at the landfill, because we've been slowly converting our vehicle fleet to run on bio-CNG, compressed natural gas generated from our trash. Costs us about $1.40 a gallon. It's a great deal. It cuts down on greenhouse gases. And actually right now, almost half of our truck fleet, our snowplows, run on bio-CNG. So it's been a really great deal. But what we did is we made the decision to move forward, and we built the plant, and it's ended up being a very good deal on a number of fronts. The payback, the return on investment is very, very substantial, and we hope to have the initial investment paid off within a few years, after which time we will be realizing literally, you know, a few $1 million annually in net revenue from that project, which will go toward, and you all know how hard operating levy dollars are to come toward providing services and replacing, you know, taxes that would have occurred. The other piece of this that fit in nicely to some other work we're doing across the county is we utilized this as a way to help out our manure digesters. Now, you may be familiar with our work that we are doing to clean up the lakes and reduce the amount of phosphorus runoff into our lakes. We have a number of different programs, but an integral part of that is that in the North Mendota watershed in particular, we have facilitated the development of manure digesters. We work with a half dozen dairy farms who send their manure to the digesters. It removes a very large portion of the phosphorus, and then it goes through an anaerobic digestion process, which creates methane gas. And the digesters used to bring in dollars the same way we did at the landfill. They would generate electricity from that gas. They began to suffer from the same market forces as we did, and so they were kind of, you know, in somewhat of a precarious position. So we built an addition to our plant at the landfill that will allow for CNG to be transported and unloaded at that plant. And what this did is it opened up a new market for our digesters. And both of the digesters, one of them has already created the ability to switch from generating electricity to the bio-CNG, and the other is in the process. And so what this does is now they benefit just like we did, and it has made them so much more economically viable to a point where they're both looking at expanding now and adding tanks, which is almost like creating a whole nother digester so they can take in more manure from more cows on our dairy farms. And it's going to help us as we look to facilitate the development of even more digesters across the county. So this is just the classic win-win. It was great for taxpayers. It's great for the environment because it cuts down methane emissions from agriculture and from our landfill. It helps us clean up our lakes, and it's good for the businesses that run the digesters. It's good for our taxpayers. So in addition to that, we did an assessment of all of our county facilities to assess for energy efficiency and renewables. And we have, over the past half dozen years, invested millions of dollars, first of all, in energy efficiency, because that has the quickest ROI. We make our money back fairly quickly on energy efficiency investments. And then we went to looking at renewables. And at this point, we have approximately 17 solar systems on various buildings and areas throughout county government, various facilities. The one you may have seen in the news is a partnership that created a 9 megawatt solar field out at the airport. And this was another one of those win-wins. This project was no money out of the county's pocket. We partnered with MG&E. We said, if you will build a solar field at the airport, we will lease you the land at market rate, by the way, but we will guarantee that we will buy every bit of the electricity that's generated from that. So for MG&E, it was really a no-risk proposition. They did the math. We said we would also like to pay less than we're paying now for electricity. And it worked out that we are now offsetting 40% of Dane County's electricity from that one project. And we're paying about $140,000 less annually in electric bills. So MG&E gets a guaranteed customer, get to expand the renewables. We displace fossil fuel generated electricity, and we save the taxpayers $140,000 a year. So that, along with our other projects, and then one that we are developing as we speak with Alliant Energy out across the street from our landfill, will bring us in county government to 100% renewable offset once the next field, which is twice as big as the MG&E field, what we're doing with Alliant, is finished. So that's internally. So then our next step was to look externally and looking at what could we do. And this was, when we had a federal government that was not looking real favorably on climate change and renewables. The state government wasn't doing a lot at that point, but we didn't want that to deter us. So we decided to look at what we could do to move forward on a local level in the hopes of not only reducing countywide our greenhouse gas emissions, but also becoming a model for other communities to show that we could get a lot done regardless of what's going on at the state and federal level. We sure do like their help when they can, but we didn't want to use that as an excuse for not doing anything ourselves. So 3 years ago, I created the Office of Energy and Renewables. And what we did, or Energy and Climate Change technically is the word. And so what we did then is we started a process of bringing together 30-some folks from across different sectors, from utilities, from environmental organizations, schools, local businesses, municipalities, to put together a climate action plan that we could use as a roadmap for things that we can control locally. And when you look at it, there actually is, and there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. We don't have much of a stick in local government, as you know, but in a way, that's good because the federal and the state government has the stick. They can put in the regulations in place. And what we do is create cultural change through partnerships, through finding like-minded people, and there are a lot of them in Dane County who want to work to reduce climate change gases and who want to save money. Because as I've done, as I mentioned with a couple of projects we did, even if the climate change aspect of a lot of this work isn't on your radar screen, this is a way for people to save money. And certainly now, as we're entering a stage where we hope to be in recovery from COVID, businesses are going to need to save money. There are going to be projects there are going to be jobs that need to be created. And by the way, the solar field, for example, that we developed with MG&E, that was built in the height of COVID, but it was an outdoor construction project. So instead of us just writing a check to the utilities, who write the check to the coal producing states and countries, those dollars stayed right here in Dane County, and they put people to work with good paying jobs in the midst of a pandemic. So there's a lot of goodness all around that can happen from this kind of work. So fast forward, the climate action plan, a lot of work went into it. It has been completed, and Kathy Kuntz, who is now our director of the office, has been tasked with implementation of the plan. We don't want a plan that's just going to sit on the shelf. And we're really fortunate to have Kathy because she's been in this business for decades, and implementation in the energy efficiency field has been has been what she's focused on in her profession. So the timing of having her come on board couldn't be better. And so I'm going to hand it off to Kathy. She'll tell you a little bit about the plan, and then we're happy to answer any questions, serve as a resource, not only tonight, but moving forward. We really appreciate the relationship we have with you and look forward to finding ways we can work together on this plan.
Thanks, Joe. It's always fun to do these events with you, and it's great to be here in Cross Plains talking about the Climate Action Plan. So I'm going to dig in a little bit more to what's in the plan and what we're thinking about. So just to kind of give you some food for thought as we open things up for questions. So as the county executive said, he and Keith Riopel, who is the founding director of our office, created this Council on Climate Change, a really diverse group of stakeholders who came together to create the Climate Action Plan. And I always think it's important to say two things about the Climate Action Plan. The first is a point that the county exec just made, that at the very first meeting of the council, he told them to focus on the art of the possible. He said he didn't want, them talking about what they couldn't do. He wanted them to figure out what we could do. How do we get results? And really, I think our plan is unique among many of the plans I've looked at in that it is so focused on what can we get done. The other important thing is about how visionary this is. So as that council came together and talked about reducing emissions, they ended up talking also about the co-benefits of reducing emissions. That if we reduce emissions in smart ways, we can address equity and justice issues in our community. We can deliver economic, health, and ecosystem benefits. We can make our communities more resilient, and we can bridge rural-urban divide. So really, the Climate Council was thinking about how do we maximize the wins as we reduce emissions? And that kind of flows through everything we're doing, thinking about that maximization. So like in any case, when you're doing this sort of a plan, it's really important to know where you start. We did a greenhouse gas inventory for the county that's a baseline for our plan. So in 2016, Dane County produced about 7.5 million metric tons of carbon equivalents. And the pie chart shows you how that breaks out. So the biggest piece of the pie chart is this brown piece that's labeled electricity. In Wisconsin, most of our electricity still comes from burning coal and natural gas. So there's a lot of emissions in our electricity. Next to that, these two yellowish pieces that are labeled residential and commercial, that's the natural gas we burn in our buildings to heat the buildings and the water in the buildings. So really, a little bit over half of our emissions pie is the built environment in Dane County. And then the next biggest piece is transportation. And that just gives you, I think, a useful sense of scale about what is going to matter in this plan. The other thing that's really important, and Joe mentioned this too, is we looked at how Dane County's climate is already changing and the likely changes forward. So we're really fortunate in Wisconsin. We have this thing called WICI, which is the Wisconsin Initiative for Climate Change Impacts. These are nationally renowned climate scientists at the university who've worked with folks at DNR to take these global climate models and break them down to local climate models. So in our plan, they updated some information for us there. And as the executive said, the bottom line for us in Dane County is it's going to get hotter and wetter. And both of those things have really important impacts on what we do and how we plan forward. Both of those things we need to plan for so that they don't jeopardize our well-being. And again, nobody knows that better than Cross Plains. So to create the plan, Keith created a number of subject matter working groups. This is actually how I first got involved. I was on the energy efficiency group. There were about a dozen of these groups that were topical, and each group looked at best practices, sometimes around the world, and came up with recommendations that they took to the council and then ultimately became part of the plan. And those recommendations kind of fall in two really big categories. First, of course, we want to reduce emissions. And there are three primary strategies there. First, we want to be as efficient as possible. Whether you're talking about energy or water or food, it doesn't make any sense to bring things to Dane County and then waste them. Okay, so efficiency is a cornerstone of this. The second thing is to transition from dirty sources of fuel to clean energy sources, to get our electricity from solar and wind, to use that renewable natural gas at landfills and manure digesters. And then the last piece is just to use that clean energy. So when we've got 100% clean electricity, we want our buildings and vehicles to be running on that electricity, with RNG fueling the heavy duty vehicles. So that's the emission side of this. The other side of this that's really important for a place like Dane County is that we also want to be smart about sequestering carbon, because we have opportunities in our forests as well as in our soil to sequester more carbon and indeed create additional value for the carbon sequestration that happens. So that's sort of kind of a sketch of all of the recommendations. It's not very practical for me to talk about all of the recommendations when we do these talks. The other thing, though, to understand about the recommendations is, remember, we've got that, we know we started out with 7.5 million metric tons. We want to understand how we're making progress on that. And so each of the working groups identified some very, very specific outcomes that they believe their recommendations would achieve. So for example, our renewable energy group said about solar, we want 1,200 megawatts installed by 2030, and then wind and solar meeting all of the load by 2045. So very specific recommendations. These recommendations we could put back into the climate model and understand how they affected our emissions. And the other thing I should say about this list is these are definitely ambitious recommendations, but I believe they're all doable for us. So the good news is when we look at that in the climate model, so again, we started at this 7.5 million metric tons. If we hit all of those outcomes by 2030, we can cut the county-wide emissions in half. That's really significant because that's what the climate scientists are telling us we need to do. Now, the other thing you should notice about this graph is that it does not get to net zero in 2050. My graph doesn't even go to net zero. So there's a lot of, the emissions left here are mostly natural gas in buildings and gas and diesel vehicles on the road that were not yet fully cost effective in all scenarios for sort of all customers in this plan. But as we go forward, the most important thing for us right now is to get this decade right, to get emissions cut in half by 2030. And we know that the next plan, more things will be cost effective and will carve off more of those emissions that are still remaining. So this is a cyclical process. Maybe the most important thing about the CAP is that it's ambitious and you know, we're ready to implement it. And that's really what we've been doing in the last few months. We've been doing these talks to engage folks in the plan. A core thing I'm doing in our Office of Energy and Climate Change is figuring out ways to make it easy for folks to reduce their emissions and to celebrate the leadership we see out there. So really to support folks getting things done and to give them applause as they move forward. And I want to give you just a couple of examples of that before I close. So on our website, which you can get to daneclimateaction.org or through the county, there's a what you can do page. And on this page, there are links for individuals, for businesses and communities to all kinds of resources that help folks move down a path. And I want to highlight just a couple of things as an illustration. So first, the Sustainability Leaders Collaborative. I think Melissa's going to talk about this a little bit after we talk about an upcoming meeting. So this is a thing that the county exec and Madison mayor created in 2019 to support local governments working together on sustainability. And the photo here is from an event we did this summer that we hosted for fleet staff in various communities to come together and talk to Dane County's folks about the renewable natural gas vehicles. And we also had Madison staff there with their electric vehicles. So trying to help people overcome those barriers. This is a place where as local governments are trying to figure something out, we're connecting them with other folks who maybe figured out that or have some lessons learned to share. And it's been really well received. I feel like we're getting some good momentum there. Another good example of a resource is PACE financing. So PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. And this is a financing where if a business owns their facility, they can borrow funding for efficiency or renewable energy projects. There's a bunch of categories of projects down there in the corner. And there's a positive cash flow. So if you borrowed money and put a solar installation on your facility, maybe your electric bill would go down $600 a month. The loan payment would be like $450 a month. So you'd actually be gaining $150 a month from doing that project. And this is one of the things that when we talk to local governments, we're really interested in thinking about how we can collaborate to make more businesses aware of this resource, because particularly in these challenging times, it's nice to have a little bit of extra cash flow. The final example here for businesses and local governments, in late last year, we launched a Climate Champion program. And this is a recognition program. So we're recognizing businesses and local governments and nonprofits that are leading on energy and water efficiency, on fleet practices, on kind of a myriad of things. And so we recognize more than 30 entities in our first round. We've got a cool interactive map on the website where you can read about these various facilities. And our aim is to at least double that level of champions in 2021. And so this is really about calling out the folks. One of the things that's amazing about Dane County is we've got a lot of really terrific resources. So the first general dentistry in the country to be carbon neutral is right here in Dane County. So it's celebrating those stories and giving folks credit for the leadership they're showing. The last thing I'll say is really about kind of bigger mobilization. So one of the things we're working on right now is thinking about how we partner with a variety of stakeholder groups to get folks involved in climate action. And we're really interested in doing that via partnerships. So we're having some conversations with faith communities, with workplace green teams and other entities who want to help mobilize people to action. And really the point here is to give people the kind of wherewithal to be examples and catalysts in their own neighborhoods, in their communities, to move these issues forward, and always thinking about how they can help us celebrate that local climate leadership. And so with that, I'm going to close this so we can see each other and hear your questions.
That was terrific. So I know I already have a list of questions, so I'm going to hold my questions and open it up for my fellow Sustainability Committee members. Who has questions? John, I see you've unmuted yourself. You're ready.
No, I'm not. I unmuted myself to pressure myself to question thought. So
Do you want to give somebody else a chance? All right, Kevin, you got it.
I got a lot of questions. First of all, thank you. That was wonderful. But I'll start with one that it seems like the county was able to really get a sense of baseline data. And you must have spent effort and money just to get those data, because that's one thing we're struggling on, is how does a community like us actually measure success and know that we're doing the right things. And so I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on how to try to figure out the very beginning. We have some good ideas on how to move forward, but how do you ground yourself first?
Kathy, you and I
Kathy?
talked about this.
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to go, Joe? Go.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So one of the things that Melissa and I talked about when we talked a couple weeks ago is that I think we need to, I think this is a topic for the Sustainability Leaders Collaborative, because I think we should be thinking about economies of scale here. And, you know, certainly I've become increasingly aware of some data sources that can be useful to local communities. And so thinking about, are those some places to start with this? And, or I would say we're also trying to think about how we get more useful data from our utilities that would help us. You know, how could you get community scale data to know, is your energy usage going down or up in the community? So that's some of the stuff we've been thinking about.
Yeah, and the worry is, of course, a community like us just trying to get so bogged down with trying to find those data that we don't want to move forward with anything because we can't find the baseline. And so at some point we have to sort of throw up our hands, I think, and say, let's move forward with whatever we have. But I know that in order to feel, well, maybe in order to prove to our constituents, I'm on the village board here as well, that we're doing something positive, it would be nice to show some hard data on those, to show that, so.
And are you thinking, first of all, about municipal facilities or just in general?
I think the municipal facilities, I think we have a pretty good handle on that, Bill. I'm thinking more in general, sort of a community-wide, how much garbage are we producing? How much recycling are we producing? You know, those kind of, there's certain data that we just don't have or don't have access to. How much the community uses. I think that's where I'm looking at it for a grander scale than just municipality.
Sure. I guess my bias would be, and I'm not necessarily right, but would be not to let that stop you from moving ahead if there are doable projects and low-hanging fruit, you know, and just measuring those one by one. You know, if you have businesses who are interested in adopting PACE, you know, or if you have municipal projects you want to go ahead with or something like that, I think if the opportunities exist to do those, I mean, I think, like, for example, even if you're using a business, you could always look back on that data, right? As long as the business, you know, the analysis would be, this was the use before, and then after efficiencies and renewables, whatever they use through PACE. I would, you know, look for that balance, right? Not to, if there are projects shovel ready, especially if there ends up being any type of, you know, stimulus money or incentives coming from the federal government, you know, in recovery plans. I think just finding that balance between the two is good. Take the opportunities when they present.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we did. We did it all at once.
Roll together.
Kevin, did you want to ask another question, or do you want to hand it over to?
No, maybe we'll get around to this one. I'll let somebody else question.
Okay, all right. John, are you ready?
Sort of. I was thinking back to the graph that you showed, where basically, if I added it all up correctly, almost between 75 and 80% of the carbon-based emissions were coming from 3 places. And my question, and this is kind of bouncing off of what Kevin just said, was, is that, and the question is, that's Dane County overall. Do you think that is something that could be applied to, say, across Plains, where we could say, you know, this is where our usage is, you know, 75 to 80% is based on, you know, and I wish I almost took a picture of the graph just so I could sound intelligent when I asked, you know, restated the 3 places. But basically the question is, does that graph represent smaller communities generally as well? Thank you.
Okay, this is it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I screenshotted it, had the same thought.
I will send you guys the PDF of the PowerPoint. I'll send that to Bill after this so that you got it. I would say, so two things about this. So our baseline is the emissions we produce in Dane County. There are two ways people talk about this. Sometimes they talk about production and sometimes they talk about consumption. There's a source I really like at the University of California, Berkeley, that's done average household consumption emissions for every zip code in the country. And I'm making a note to send you that site and some of, so I think I like their stuff. They also, the carbon calculator for households we have on our website comes from them. And so when you put in your zip code, it pops up the typical carbon profile of your zip code, and then you can put in your own information and it shows you how you vary from that typical. I think that's maybe a good example of the kind of source that I think, so what they're doing is they're grabbing all of the national sources of data and pulling it together. Their notion is that communities can't afford to spend their time trying to figure all these numbers out. We have to get the work done. So they're doing that calculation for us. And so I think there are some tools like that that help. I mean, in general, yes, build our homes and our automobiles are the two biggest sources of emissions for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I've heard you talk about a lot, Kathy, too, is really when you throw a lot of that together, and it's kind of what you just said, is buildings, right? Whether it's a home or whether there's a factory in the building, it's how efficient is that system running between the electricity, the heating. Can you imagine how much we're all going through this week? Heating and then and cooling, and if you're a business, the manufacturing process or whatever it is. So I think the efficiency, all around efficiency of buildings, I think plays that's been part of my education. It plays a larger role than maybe most of us think. It plays a larger role than I really understood before diving into some of these stats. How much buildings, because we all think of the obvious, transportation, I think, and that is very important. But buildings are huge too. And another piece of it that I like talking about too, which is, somewhat, I don't know how far the borders go before you become the town, but the sequestration piece of it too, because that's a really critical piece of any plan that, again, doesn't always get, on people's radar, is how can we do sequestration? But I think any focus on anything and everything that goes on in any and every building is a great place to start.
Thanks.
Just on
Steve?
that.
Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
Just on that sequestration part, as the executive talked about that, that's a place we know in the plan we talk about needing a better baseline of the tree canopy in Dane County. And part of that is every community having a better tracking of their own tree canopy and what that can contribute to all of this. That I always think that's like a perfect, I don't know, scout troop project or something, doing let's inventory the tree canopy in the, particularly for a smaller community where that seems more viable, or a 5th grade science project or something.
There are no scout leaders on this call.
Texting it right now. Texting it.
And there's no future scoutmaster that's married to Melissa.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. I wrote that down as soon as you said it, Kathy. It's a great idea. Hey, Steve, Michael, do either of you have questions?
This is Steve. I again just want to reiterate thanks for the excellent presentation and the fantastic work. It's really great to see how you guys have done this, albeit on a much bigger scale than we can probably handle. But great ideas, and I too was drawn to the graph. I like the where can we get the most bang for the buck, and that's a great rule of thumb. So even I think without numbers, we can say transportation and building. Bill, do you know, or other members of the board, Michael, Kevin, has the village, and as far as its operation goes, and I'm thinking its fleet, its trucks, the snow plows, and all that. Has that discussion come up about converting to any alternative energy like the compressed natural gas? It would seem to me that's a big ticket item.
Kevin or Michael, do you want to take that one?
I haven't heard anything about doing anything like that.
We've had mostly discussions about fleet replacement. What are we replacing vehicles with? But no, I would say a holistic discussion about converting to across the fleet. We have had very little luck actually getting some of those either electric vehicles or other types of vehicles into the fleet, various fleets, including this current budget. So because they're incremental changes, and oftentimes those one-time costs seem to outweigh the long-term benefit of that vehicle during that decision process at the board level. So I think we probably could reach out to you all and others to say to have to be armed with better information, so next time that decision point comes, we can maybe say, okay, well, maybe it's a couple thousand more now, but in the long term it'll save us 5,000. So, and we've never really had those data to put in front of the board at the time.
Yeah, any information I'm sorry, Steve.
No, very helpful. Go ahead.
Yeah, any information we can share, we're very happy to. Any resource, to try to connect you to. We also look at things, from the municipal financing standpoint. As operating dollars are, like gold. They're hard to come by, and there's a limited amount of it. But capital dollars, depending on what your debt load is, sometimes a municipality might find it advantageous to make a capital investment that results in operating savings. It's when you're dealing with trying to keep your levy in line, right? So if you make an investment, a capital investment in efficiency that's going to save you, even if the payback is 10 years, even if it's not, immediate, even if the payback is a little longer, the payback comes with reduced pressure on your operating budget, which equals obviously reduced pressure on your operating levy. So all of those things kind of come into play when looking at this also.
Yeah, I think that information would be helpful, and if the county has any case studies on return on investment, I think that will go a long way with our board.
Yeah, and Kathy, doesn't it also depend kind of on how they go about it, right? Because there are, if there's a third party installer, so I think some municipalities have had projects done where it's no money out of their pocket. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're happy to explore all those options with you.
Michael, did you have a question?
I don't think I really have a question. I'm just kind of absorbing it. I'll think of a question in 3 days is how I operate. But right now, nothing specific. This is a great plan, and I thank you for coming, and I want to get into it and read it. And just having an overarching umbrella effect will help us a lot, because I've just recently been going out and doing some comparative stuff between other municipalities, and now looking up even at the county is a tremendous benefit. Yeah,
agreed. Thank you. This presentation was terrific. The graph was a hit. How often do you hear that? That never happens.
The graph was a hit.
Oh, please, I'm an accountant. Give me a break. All graphs are a hit.
Well, you knew your audience anyway when you shared the graph. That was terrific. I'm curious about when you were talking about solar installations, and that now the county is offsetting 40% of its electricity from the airport project. Is that municipal only, or is that community wide?
No, that's 40% of county operations.
Okay.
You know, we have a pretty vast array of facilities and buildings. So a full 40% of our offset is from there. Then there are our other projects. And then where we cross the finish line is with the project that we just began with Alliant, that what will it be? Close to 20 megawatts? I mean, it'll be at least twice as big as MG&E. And that one will put us at 100% combined with them, the airport and all of our others.
Okay, that's helpful. My next question is maybe it's more like you have to write a book about this, but I'm kind of curious, can you talk a little bit about so villages and the county have a little different relationship, but I'm still trying to understand how the village relates to the county. Can you talk about how villages fit into the county's plan or not? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. We see the villages as key partners, you know, on many levels. We want to facilitate the sharing of information, again, because there are a lot of folks who want to do things that they might not know where to start or how to get this kind of financing. And then there might be either the county or another city or village or town has done that. And so we want to share. We're also looking at this, as I think Kathy may have mentioned, as from almost kind of a community organizing model, right? There's so much to do and so much grassroots work to be done. And so we need the partnership of every single city, town, village, committee, group, et cetera. Because, for example, one of our thoughts is with the opportunity presented by PACE that Kathy talked about, where businesses can save money now. We can't possibly get to every one of the thousands of businesses that exist in Dane County. But if we can do it community by community, if we could partner with Cross Plains to make a plan to, with your help, approach every business in Cross Plains and at least apprise them of PACE and how easy it is to do and the savings, and go for a target of, hey, could we get X percentage of the businesses in Cross Plains to participate in PACE? That'd be a huge victory. And we need partnerships like with folks like you in order to do that, because we just don't have the people power. But if you look at just that example times the 60 cities, towns, and villages in Dane County, we can accomplish a lot. It's a lot of organizing, but again, we're looking at it as a grassroots movement, neighbor to neighbor, business to business, municipality to their fellow businesses. And we think we can get a lot done. And we want your feedback and need your feedback. You know, what is most helpful to you? Because the last thing we want to do is come and say, hey, we're from the county, we're here to help. This is what you need to do, right? Our message to you is we're here to help in any way we can. Just let us know what we can do to help you achieve your goals.
Great.
So this is Michael. So you're talking about PACE, and I want to make sure I understand what that is. That's where a business can get a low interest loan to put solar panels on their building?
Yeah, so PACE is a program, and we use local lenders. And the folks who are eligible for it are businesses, nonprofit organizations who own their buildings, churches, synagogues. So, so say I go to church at X church. I decide, I talk to the leadership and we decide we want to do some energy efficiency and put some solar panels on. We get assessed. There's a whole group of folks who work together. There's a local bank that agrees to the terms that Kathy mentioned. And you get all of these upgrades done and you save money with nothing out of your pocket. And it's the same if you're a business. So think if you're a manufacturer and you can save, X number of dollars a month free of charge, no money out of your pockets, and you can tell the community and your customers that you're a green business. I mean, that's good for business because that's what people are looking for. It's good for attracting customers, businesses, maintaining businesses. So unfortunately, it's not available to residential folks, but basically any business, nonprofit, religious entity that owns a building can take advantage of this.
Are municipalities can they participate?
I don't believe so. Can they, Kathy? No.
I don't
But we can
think
figure
so.
out there are other things we can help figure out for municipalities.
Yeah, just wondering.
Now, that's not to say you couldn't talk a bank into giving you, well, or look at what it costs you to issue a bond. It's kind of, you know, and look at what the savings will be, right? It's kind of another way of measuring ROI.
Right, definitely.
Yeah, a green bond would be maybe a similar kind of strategy for a municipality. I can tell you the Oregon School District issued green bonds for their net zero elementary school that they built, and that worked really well for them. They ended up with lower interest rates than they felt they would have gotten doing a kind of more traditional financing for that school.
Mm.
So that's an example of something, you know, a connection we could help make for you guys if you wanted to talk to someone from there who was involved in that, to share some information. Happy to.
Thank you.
Kathy, we're building our website, so any information that we can borrow from the county, appreciate it.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I'll follow up with you on that, Bill.
Yeah.
How about others? Other questions, comments, reflections?
Yeah, this is Steve. Probably for you, Kathy. How have you found, what have been your most successful ways of sort of getting buy-in, connecting with the public, whether it's forums, getting feedback, or even, as you were saying before, sort of those getting people on board with those smaller grassroots kinds of local, very, very small local community efforts?
Yeah, it's a great question, Steve. You know, I think a lot of the ways that we know are most effective have been challenging during the pandemic. You know, so I'd prefer to be going to meetings of local organizations and hearing them talk about their priorities and then showing them how we can help them address those priorities. I think we are seeing, one of the places we're seeing some good success right now is with faith communities. And you know, this was a little bit of just luck, I would say. A few months ago, the exec and I were on a call with a group of people interested in climate action, and one of them was from the Wisconsin Council on Churches. And he asked, you know, well, how are you going to work with the faith community? And it prompted he and I to organize some calls where now I've got about a dozen faith leaders from across the county who are talking about how they can collaborate with each other to get more done in more faith communities. And, you know, it's leveraging their priorities and letting them really set the agenda. My job there again is to make it easier for them to do the stuff they want to do, not to say you have to do this way, kind of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will say we put this out, wasn't it, Kathy, right around, you know, actually after the pandemic began.
Yeah,
right?
Earth Day.
So as for everyone with everything we're all doing, it's been not exactly the way we planned, but you know, at the same time, we do a lot of meetings like this over Zoom, and we have been able to do a lot of networking and connecting, but it's definitely been a different rollout so far.
Any other questions? Kevin?
Yeah, again, actually, Michael asked my question about pace, so thank you, Michael. You're always a step ahead on that one. No, I think, I guess where I wanted to finish up here was to the county. You know, the Village of Cross Plains, we're about 4,000 people. We have this relatively small group you see here today with the Sustainability Committee. But I will say this, don't fret. We are making a lot of headway in several avenues, including potential solar farm and some other avenues. So I think I just want to let you know that we have a small but really effective group here. And know that your time today was well spent, because this group is a group that's getting a lot done, and we've only been around just over a year, I think, year and a half now, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
So we're flying through some stuff.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And you know, this is what it takes. It takes a bunch of small groups of people who are committed to get this work done. So we're more than happy to be here with you tonight. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. As you have seen probably from the rest of the agenda, after this, we're going to dive into our own sustainability plan. And so I've already taken some screenshots, and we'll be referring to that throughout the rest of the conversation. You're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting, but this has been incredibly helpful, and we've got a ton of notes. In fact, some things that we can do right away, updates to make to our website, and conversations that we can have. So Kathy, Joe Parisi, thank you so much for being here. This is a fantastic presentation. We would appreciate the slides so that we don't have to keep looking at screenshotted pictures on Microsoft Word, but this was fantastic. So thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. This was illuminating.
Yes,
thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thanks
really.
for having us.
We appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, next up on the agenda is our meeting minutes. Let me pull up the agenda so I can continue to guide us, or maybe Bill, you're sometimes fast. Yep, you're faster than I am. Terrific. This is perfect that Kathy already teed this up. I wanted to mention, so we're going to move into the committee member report outs. And the first thing that I'll mention is I had a great conversation with Kathy Kuntz a couple of weeks ago, and that's what prompted this presentation tonight. And one thing that I wanted to alert members to see who might participate on our behalf from Cross Plains is an upcoming opportunity that Kathy mentioned, the Dane County Sustainable Leadership Collaborative. So this meeting is happening on February 24th. That's a little over 2 weeks away, and it's happening at 2 p.m. And this will be an opportunity to meet with other folks. I think probably many of them are staff, kind of like Kelly Hilliard from Middleton, but increasingly, I think that there's an effort to bring in folks who aren't just staff, who are talking within their own communities about sustainability and climate change issues. And so Cross Plains can participate, and I would encourage anybody who wants to be that. Actually, Kathy, since you're here, could we just ask you, could more than one person attend if we had
of course
just overwhelming excitement? Okay. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk amongst ourselves and figure out whether who could participate. But I think it'd be a great opportunity. I think we've learned so much. Every time we talk to a colleague who's doing something in another community, every time we look over meeting minutes from another community, it's so illuminating. And so I think this conversation will sort of fast track efforts and enable us to learn so much faster about what communities are doing and what we can do here in Cross Plains. So does anybody, I could probably forward some material on from Kathy about this Sustainable Leadership Collaborative meeting that's happening on February 24th, but do folks have questions right off the bat about that? Does anybody know that they would want to participate?
My initial thought is I would like to know more about it. I would like to know if I'm actually like somebody that would actually be able to contribute to the discussion, because I don't feel like I'm the greatest expert in anything. But I'm interested.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Kathy, what do you think? I mean, we talked about how you're sort of shifting so that communities that don't have a sustainability coordinator like the Kellys of the world or the Stacy Reeses of the world can still participate, right?
Yeah, this is so to give you, I mentioned that we started the SLC in 2019, and it started with a meeting with a lot of elected officials. And then since then, most of the activity has been at the staff level. This time we're trying to get elected officials to come again And part of that, so that meeting is just an hour long. The exec has made me promise we'll be done in an hour. We're going to try to highlight some of the cool things going on across the county in different places, and tee up some things that we think are important to talk about going forward, like the potential for stimulus funding coming to the county and us being ready with some really good ideas that could be shovel ready kind of thing. So I think it's going to be fun, and there's going to be some like inspiring stories from a few communities, including one of our featured stories is actually the town of Vermont talking about their climate action series and their subsequent group solar buy.
So if it makes anyone more comfortable, I can attend and provide the support for any committee member who may not know all the answers.
That's great, Bill.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in seeing what this meeting is and what it contains and what can come out of it.
Well, if Bill and Michael are going, then I'll go too.
Kathy, is this virtual or is this in person?
Oh, it's virtual. It's virtual. Yeah. So I think, Melissa, do you want to circulate that email with the RSVP information? How you
I'll do
get
that
in the loop, and terrific.
Yep. Okay. I will do that after I make a note so I don't forget it. All right, so that's it for that report out. And I'm so glad you were here so you could talk a little bit more about it, but I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to learn about what our neighbors are doing. And as you know, it's always easier to steal blatantly from them than to come up with new ideas. So I'm all for it. How about
our mission statement?
Steal blatantly from others? Yeah, it should be.
Pretty much. I haven't had one original idea.
All right, well, that's it for my report out. To other folks, are there other committee members who have an update or report out for something that's not already on the agenda?
I can go.
All right, Bill.
So yeah, I can provide an update on the solar farm. We did go to the village board with the proposal in the closed session, and coming out of closed session, the village board did authorize me to move forward in that. And so right now we're currently negotiating. And so once we have something that is accepted by the village board, I'll provide an update at that time. It's moving in the right direction.
That's cool.
That's really great news.
Great news, Bill.
Yeah.
Is there, I don't know if there's anything that Kevin and or Michael may want to add to that. But yeah, because it was in closed session, we're not able to go into too much detail about it.
Yeah, no, Bill's pretty much handling the ball on this one.
That's fantastic. So what's the next step? So Bill, you'll come back, you're in negotiations, but then you go back to the board, or where does it go from?
Yeah, so we'll get terms situated, and then it'll come back to the village board to consider the terms. Once we have the land committed, then I would imagine that the board would negotiate with the developer at that time, and then work with MG&E on in their renewable energy rider program to take a look at the rates.
Great, that's terrific. Other questions for Bill on that? Okay, thanks, Bill. Do you have any other report outs, any updates?
We continue to get residential solar permits. So I think ever since we streamlined the conditional use permit process to a simple permitting process, we've received, I believe, 4. And we've been able to turn them around in about a week and a half's time. So a lot easier because of because it doesn't require, it no longer requires a conditional use permit. We did adjust the fee on the fee schedule. It went from $250 for a permit down to $100. So that's an incentive. And basically that covers staff time and potential notification if it requires a public hearing. So we continue to see interest there. There are more than one vendor or contractor that is in our community installing residential roof mounted solar arrays. And so I think, it's getting out there. I mean, contractors are hearing and they're looking to take advantage. So I think we're headed in the right direction there. We'll see what happens this year. It usually slows down about this time, and then we'll pick up again in October.
Great, that's fantastic. 4 permits received since that streamlining process was wrapped up. That's great.
Hey, Bill, are those primarily like retrofits, or is this new construction, or?
Yeah, so they're older homes, not new construction. Yeah, but they're usually new systems on older roofs. So I guess I don't know what you mean by retrofit, but
Yeah, that's what I meant, on existing structures. Yeah.
Yep, correct.
Great.
Bill, anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, great. Other reports, other updates from committee members?
Two quick things. I'm sort of both glomming on to Bill. Sorry, Bill, but I didn't want to cut you off. Part of the additional, there's an addition, that incentive, the federal incentive for the tax incentive extended for residential solar. At 20, I think it's 26%. It went down to 20. It was going to go to 22, and then it was extended to 26. I think that goes through the calendar year, Bill.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we'll hit another October. People start panicking and say we got to get it done. The other thing is, Bill, I want to and everybody else, the MG&E is looking at a possible solar site not too far away from the village, also pretty large scale, that I just happened to find out about. So I don't think we're it's not a competition thing, but I think moving faster would certainly be better than moving slower with any solar farm that we might consider.
Kevin, where are they? Where's that?
It's like 2 miles out of town, 3 miles out of town. That's about all I know so far. So
you don't know which direction?
No.
Huh.
No, it was just somebody that I know at MG&E is working on a project, and they have a meeting Friday, and after Friday, I think I'll know more. But
okay.
It's close to town or village, close to the village. And I don't think it's a direct competition, but I think it would behoove us to do whatever we can to move quicker than drag our feet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, and yes, please keep us apprised if you hear anything more about that.
Okay.
All right. Any other updates? Okay, let's move on to discussion and review of the January 11th Sustainability Committee minutes. Hopefully folks have had a chance to review that, and I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Steve will motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Second?
Michael will second them.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the January 11th minutes, say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, great. Moving on to the discussion of tonight of the sustainability plan. So I do want to do a quick time check. So it's 7:10. We had a really great, robust, important conversation with the county, but I want to check in with where we go from here for tonight's meeting. Do we want to, what we had talked about on our last meeting was that on tonight's meeting, we would be focusing a little bit more on the, where to go, on energy, land use, solid waste, and the other category for the draft sustainability plan. And if folks need that link, I can chat out the link so that you can join me in here. It looks like somebody else is here as well, but I'm going to chat out the link because we're all working in this Google Doc. But I want to do a quick time check here. So what do we feel like? How are folks doing time-wise? Do we want to give this another 20 minutes? Do we want to, how much do we think we can bite off considering the time? My kids are watching screen time, so I've got like an hour and like 36 minutes.
I'm good on time as well. I could benefit too from just doing a recap of where we left off.
Yep. Okay, great. I'll do that, Steve.
Yeah, I'm good until 8, and then
Okay.
and then I'll start to melt because I haven't had dinner yet. But,
I don't want you to get hangry, so.
No, I won't. But after 8, I will.
All right.
Alyssa,
Bill?
you have the con, so you can go ahead and share your screen if you want to jump in.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. And Michael, Kevin, Bill, how are you doing for time?
I'm fine.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
good for a little while yet.
Bill, I always worry about you because you're in the office and I like want to deliver dinner to you or something. So.
Well, I'm actually at home tonight.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right. All right, great. Well, let's plot on then. So I shouted out the link, but I'm also going to screen share. So here we go. All right. So here's a recap. Here's the top of the village sustainability plan, the draft. On our last call in January, we were reflecting on the feedback that we received from Kelly Hilliard from Middleton. And what Kelly said was, we are in the process of updating our sustainability plan, but I wouldn't suggest that you dive deep into all of these very specific metrics. And oh, have I been muted this whole time?
No.
No, it
okay.
just came up.
It just, okay, that was weird. So our plan had been to dive into the to gathering baseline data and then setting goals for increasing and decreasing and improving sustainability based on the baseline data. What Kelly said is, that's a great idea, but the reality is without staff, it's going to be really hard to go back and update your data to see how you're doing vis-a-vis those goals. So her suggestion was you should pick a few actions within categories and make them meaningful, but pick something that's doable and that's trackable with the the staff and the committees that you have. So based on that, we sort of retooled and said maybe what we should be doing is getting very clear about the actions that we think are realistic, that we can do within a shorter time frame. So not creating a 10-year plan, but something more like a 1 to 3 year plan. And then being very clear about who's going to do it. And then we also started to map out what the approximate cost would be. The decision on cost, what the committee talked about on our last call, was eventually what we'll probably do in the final version of the plan is, instead of having dollar figures, probably have that represented by the dollar symbols. And we would be very clear about kind of, $1 sign equals, I don't know, $100,000 or less, something like that. But rather than getting too being in a situation where we approximate a cost and then we're held to it, we thought it'd be better just to have dollar signs to indicate relative cost of things. So where we left it was that we would focus on creating this vision statement, which Kelly said for Middleton, that was actually one of the more useful things to do because it set the intention for the city and for the community. So this vision statement here, we agreed that we would do that in each of our categories. So for water, energy, land use, transportation. And then we would draft out some actions to take in the next couple of years, along with the time frame, who would bottom line that action, and what the approximate cost would be. So over the last couple of weeks, many of us have been working in this document to draft out some language, draft out some possible actions, and then draft out some responsible parties. And our hope on this call is that we would look at the vision statements and proposed actions for basically everything below water, because that's what we did together as a group in January. We drafted out a vision statement and some possible actions with timeframes. So the plan was today to dive into energy, land use, transportation, and get as far as we can until our next call. Steve, was that like way more in depth than what you wanted for a recap?
No, that's perfect. That's great. And I do remember sort of Kelly's the parting words, and I think we all got very excited about that. Not getting so bogged down in the weeds, letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. We want to actually get some stuff on paper and get going, actionable things. So I think everybody got excited about sort of assuming that kind of philosophy. So yeah, that's helpful. And I want to add too, thanks to Michael for you send along that Monona plan. And one thing that impressed me about that is the amount of those types of actions that they included in there. Some are very concrete and doable. Expand the sustainability section at the library. Boom. That's concrete. It's doable. It's a short time frame. Those kind of things. I had quite a few of those in there. So I thought that was a helpful plan. Appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, Steve, that was like an appendix to their plan. Their plan is like a bunch of words that when you read it is not that gripping. And then I found this on the website as a separate document, and it was like action, 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 action. I was like, wow, this is awesome, which is kind of like what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I
but
agree.
There is a whole entire different document. That's the plan that is much more wordy.
Let's not do that.
So where we left off last time was we got through water, at least for the first iteration, and felt comfortable with that. So tonight we're going to start with energy and see how far we get. So I was working on the energy section, and the vision statement that I'm offering to the group for wordsmithing tonight is basically it's this concept that Kathy and the exec talked about, which is another way to talk about it. If you've heard of the concept of deep decarbonization, it's this idea where you maximize energy efficiency, you clean up electricity, and you try to electrify everything you can to get it off gas. So I've talked about that in a different way here for the energy vision. Energy use by the village of Cross Plains, businesses and residents decrease. An increasing share of space heating, water heating, and transportation rely on electricity rather than gas. And electricity for all uses is sourced from renewable energy sources such as wind and solar. Do folks want to talk about that first, or do you want me to go through the actions that I've got and then we can talk about it as a whole?
I was thinking back to the presentation that you put together that actually started this whole thing, the presentation at the library. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the people that was talking about this after they, told us all the lovely future, what the future was going to look like for Southern Wisconsin. was somebody had asked the question of, well, what can you do? And I distinctly remember the electrify everything comment. And then once you do that, then move to renewable energy sources for that electricity. So that mission statement makes complete sense to me.
Cool. And you know, the graph that was presented tonight, this is really, buildings account for so much of our greenhouse gas emissions, with space heating and water heating here in the Midwest being cold, and we're using a lot of gas, and gas contributes to a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So this is, I wanted to make sure that we were thinking beyond electricity, but covering all energy use.
I don't want to wordsmith it all, unless I'm trying to avoid that, but I think that there are some things in here that could be cleaned up a little bit. And I just, think about who's reading this. It's not us. It's going to be the general public. And if they read the Village of Cross Plains, are they reading actually like municipal services, or are they reading everybody in the village? And then when I see space heating, are they thinking like that space heater that's just outside my door in the other room? So I just think maybe some terms that we could play with a little bit, but in general, I like it. And then I really like the very last half of that last sentence, meaning electricity is source for all renewable energy sources such as wind and solar. Like, to me, that really sums up the vision part of it. And the other two parts are kind of like, are very pragmatic. Right? How is that going to happen? So I'll give it like a 4 out of 5, and with some playing around, could make it a 5 out of 5.
Kevin, would you be willing to play a little bit in there at some point in the Google Doc? Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
I'll also learn to shut up.
Yeah, I think I heard you volunteer to rewrite it. I think that's what I heard.
Got me again. All right.
Any other thoughts on the vision piece? Again, the idea with these vision statements is it allows us to then, it sets the intention and allows us to create some very clear action steps. But am I missing anything big here, or did I, misstate anything that we believe needs to happen or shouldn't happen?
Oh, that looks good. The nuclear energy guy is going to be mad, though.
Can't please everybody.
Costco's running a sale on home nuclear. I saw it again this weekend. It's right next to the pet supplies.
All right. Well, I'm gonna pitch a few actions, and this is challenging because I was doing it on my own, and this is the first time I've shared it with the committee. So I don't know the best way to, talk about these. I'm going to share them all, and then at some point we have to figure out what stays and what goes and what gets prioritized. But I'll talk a little bit about everything I've got here. So the first is easy because we're already doing that, and we've talked about this as a full committee, which is just exploring this idea of a solar farm. The next one is something that we've also talked about, which is hosting a solar home tour for village residents. I want to kick that up a notch. As I was thinking about it today, we could think about expanding it beyond just a solar home tour, which would be cool, but we could expand it to a sustainability tour. And there are a lot of folks who want to raise chickens and would like to see other chicken coops around town. There are folks who like gardening and would like to see what other residents are doing with their gardens. So there could be an opportunity to just have a bigger community building event that is sustainability oriented. And we have, coop tours, which other towns have done, garden tours, solar tours. So just wanted to throw that out there. But so that could be separate. But we've already talked about a solar home tour.
I'll even interrupt and volunteer our house, as we would be willing to show the geothermal system.
Yes. I love that. I was actually going to ask you if you would be willing to do that. Yeah, I think that'd be very, very, very cool. So I'll just keep going through these, and then we can go back and talk about them as a group. So the next thing is a set of kind of lead by example opportunities, and some of these are, like I said, blatantly stolen from other municipalities. I think this comes from Verona, maybe it's Monona. But completing energy audits of all village facilities. Actually, Bill, I don't know if that's been done. It might have already been done, or maybe something that's routinely done. But if not, I'd add that to the queue of things for us to think about. And then setting the intention that energy efficiency and conservation is a priority in village, municipal purchases. So I'm not sure I don't know where that would live, but that being just a creed, or somehow embedding that in our purchasing decisions explicitly, would be something that I think that we could be doing.
Hey, Melissa, can I speak to that real quick?
Yeah.
When I was going through like the general sustainability tab, and I hit the Monona general sustainability tab, really focuses a lot on like municipal policies, like green cleaning, things such as this. There's a lot of stuff in there that deal with those sort of ideas.
You said that was Monona?
Yeah, that was the Monona one, but it was like under their general sustainability header, where it's which I kind of have some stuff written down there under the general one. I just kind of started throwing everything just down there and trying to figure out where it should go. But when you're talking about municipal purchases, I mean, that could just be an overarching idea for lots of different things, not just energy related. I mean, it even goes into like, having sustainability education for village employees, like things like that specific.
Okay, that's great. The next.
Sorry, I didn't mean it. I don't want to belabor this, but I had the same. I struggled with that very one because it looked like a policy statement. And Michael, your solution was elegant, and that is, group the policies. Group things that we would want to install in policy.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Advocating. Have an advocacy section. So.
Probably that same structure would be useful for all of the categories, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I think you're right. Yep, that's
okay. So let's flag that for the next iteration. So the next one that I've got deals with municipal transportation, and this is something that we touched on earlier on this call, is just trying to get out ahead of the upcoming opportunities around fleet. So replacing vehicles and having the data ready when the time comes. And so if there's an opportunity for us to detail what are the opportunities, so that we can talk to folks at the county ahead of time and be ready with that information, that would be great. This continues to be, village operations. This next one is on streetlights, and making sure that we're not lighting anything that doesn't need to be lighted. I'm not sure what that light. I would say light,
Lit
but
it.
I think the English teacher at John's house might say it's supposed to be lighted. Anyway, I'm gonna avoid that. You're muted, John. Okay, so and then replacing with LED or the functional equivalent, and this, I did take this, I think, from Verona. Then these last two are kind of my original ideas. So here's what I haven't talked with folks on the committee about, but I'd be really curious about two things here. So exploring how the village can support new home construction and development that is not electric, specifically not tied to gas systems, which some communities are doing across the country. And we could talk a little bit about so there's precedent for it. I think in Wisconsin, you might have to have, by law, a backup if you don't have gas installation. I'm not sure what the deal is, but just exploring that. What would it look like for us to have new developments in the village that do not have gas running out to them? And then the last one is encouraging new homes to meet Energy Star home standards. So those are some of the ideas that I came up with. I'm curious about, what did I miss? What are you thinking we should be thinking about? And what would you push back on, or what would you tweak?
So Melissa, for the first one, I think you can remove the verbiage about exploring. I think we're past that, and just say develop a solar farm.
Yeah, agreed.
That's awesome that we can change that language. That's great. Are we ready to put a time frame in that, Bill?
3 years.
Okay. And I think we said that we would, instead of writing 3 years, we said we would just write the number, right? So it's that 2024 maybe. Is that right?
That's 4 years.
21, 22, 23, you're right.
I'm holding Bill's feet to the fire. 3 years. I saw the graph.
The responsible party is the village board. So
Yeah, who knows? Some of us may not be there in 3 years when it's voted on. We need some new people running. Yeah, I'm going back to what the county was talking about. What's their best bang for the buck, and ensuring co-benefits. I don't see anywhere we can add those, so I'm just going to focus on what you said here. I think what you've got here is good. I think there's a lot of really good points. Minor edits.
Oh wait, are you I think I heard you volunteer, Kevin. Was that?
Okay. I'm already yes. Little stuff. There's nothing that I see big, and if you want me to kind of look at it with some fresh eyes, I'll do that.
Cool. How about others?
we can talk about what it would take to get development to be all electric.
Ah,
I think
that would be amazing.
I think that may take some thinking, because it's going to start with a policy idea, because the tool to do it would be in the restricted covenants. But how do you convince a developer to accept those covenants? And this is assuming that there's no state statute about it. How do you market this type of housing and heating opportunity to the general market, and for the demographic that would like to live in this type of housing and depend on electric, and not have the backup of gas? To me, I think from a developer standpoint, that the negative would be that your market to sell these type of homes would be smaller, but you don't have the cost of bringing in gas per se in a development like Sundance, where on top of Brewery Road, where it's more rural and you may not have gas line up there.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what they're finding is that, so what we know is that that heating our homes contributes, that's one of our biggest contributors to climate change is our buildings and our heating our homes. But retrofitting a established home to be all electric is way more expensive than building it electric from the start. And so if we can get out ahead of future developments somehow, it'll reduce the cost. And as you said, rather than running new gas lines out, there are some some homes that might, I don't know if new developments are propane anymore. I don't know how that works, but it could reduce the cost of running gas lines out to new developments if we can figure out how to get ahead of it. At some point, I think John might have had an idea about exploring geothermal for new developments ahead of time. John, is that,
I can speak to that. I can speak to a couple different things. Number one, if you, in Wisconsin, if you are using a non-traditional method to heat your home, non-traditional meaning not natural gas or propane, you do have to have a backup system. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because my geothermal system is an all-electric system to run the pumps, and my backup system is electricity. So if I lose electricity, I don't have heat. But nobody does because your furnaces won't turn on either. So it's a silly law, but that's the law. If you're using non-traditional, you have to have a backup system. Also, to your point that it's easier to build in the electric system when you're building the house versus retrofitting. Retrofitting is kind of a messy job, and especially depending on how old the house is. It's a very expensive proposition to go that route. Whereas when you're just building the house, new construction, if you build it for, again, a non-traditional method of heating and cooling, it's far cheaper to do it. Our house in particular, when we wanted to put the geothermal in, I won't go into the retrofitting thing, but in order to put the coil line in, we had to drill wells because everything was already built up. And wells are expensive. However, all you really need to do is dig a coil line in a trench in your backyard in a new construction, and then just, have enough line in it to meet the thermal needs of your house. That's far easier to do in new construction. That's a bobcat, digging a hole and then a bobcat filling dirt back in. So in all of those respects, doing the non-traditional heating is far cheaper in new construction than it is in retrofitting to already existing construction. If we were to build a new house at any point in time, we would use the same system to heat the house, but we would spend probably only a third of the money that we spent to put it in.
Yeah. And I would imagine that I feel like I've heard actually that there are economies of scale if you're doing that for a development than if you're doing it for a single house.
I have heard that there are communities that are sharing the buried coils, or if they're not sharing them, they're just laying them, a bunch of them, right on top of each other in the same trench. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could build it and you could just go right down the lot line, and it, yeah, so one trench, one excavation and a bunch of people putting in the temperature. What they do is they either transfer heat back into the earth, or they take heat out of the earth, depending on which way you run the pumps. But all you really need to do is have enough length to cool what the fluid that you're using to run through the compressors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, And there would be huge economies of scale to that.
So Bill, your question or your comment about how to make it, how to convince developers or how to make it lucrative for developers, I think it could be cheaper, especially if you look at the life cycle of home ownership. I think it could be, cheaper for homeowners. I don't know that home builders care a ton about that, but it could be less expensive. And I think that it could speak to a certain niche market of, homeowners who don't want gas and also don't want the health issues of having gas in your homes, because there are increasingly there's documented cases of gas leaks in a home aggravating people who have asthma, and so it messes with their indoor air quality as well. So
So my recommendation would be that the sustainability committee organize a presentation in regards to the research to present to the village board on this type of heating and the economies of scales, potential return on investment, so that when the village board goes in to negotiate the restricted covenants on future developments, they can have this to rely on.
Great.
Yeah, I think that, so the item here is, you're suggesting, Bill, here, the item is really just to change its verbiage a little, just to say, be more direct, which
Yep.
is Sustainability Committee will do research and present to the board a policy change. And then I would take this whole thing and move this up to the policy section as well then. Because this is a policy change about energy, but it's a policy change. It's not a simple task, and or I guess the task relates to policy, but it's not a simple, I guess it's a task that requires board action. It's to be effective. So I would move this up to policy, to the other section.
Okay.
I think you got it, and I think that it's good enough here that, our recommendations, I would be maybe a little bit more broad about regarding electrifying home heating, and just because we may dig into this and decide there's it's not just electrification, but there may be other aspects of this that we want to target. So maybe, I don't know if it's just
to new homes,
yeah,
Kevin?
for new homes, yeah, for
Okay.
new homes, yeah, like electrifying new homes, but maybe it's more like just I don't know if I want to be so generic as saying sustainable,
Yeah.
sustainable heating or something in homes. There's, be more broad than electric heating.
Yeah, there's something just about new developments, because we've covered a number of things already in this committee about with new developments, right? Like making it easier to get solar. When you're bringing in a new development, there are opportunities. So maybe it's more like a presentation about what the sustainability committee would like to see when we're considering new developments.
Yeah, I think that the way you said that is more broad, because electrification would be one of those.
Right, one of those, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, so it may relate to energy, may relate to runoff, it may relate to a whole bunch of things. So now we're starting to get a little bit bigger here. So that's why I think it would be better in the policy section.
Okay. I'm just going to note that I'll recategorize these into policy.
Okay.
So I'll just add a quick plug in here that if we want to see something in regards to this moving sooner than later, as there's only one development left that would be negotiating restricted covenants coming up.
And that's Sundance?
That's Sundance. The village board just recently approved the restricted covenants for the creek crossing.
I am happy to help this committee put together a presentation to the board. So when could we do that, Bill?
So in regards to the status, I mean, currently we recently sent over, the village board approved the language for the jurisdictional transfer agreement. That's over at the town board. They're going to go through their public process. And so this is all kind of setting up for the overall discussion in regards to construction and design and annexation and review of the final plat. I would say we probably want to get this in before the end of the year.
Before the end of calendar year,
Calendar year,
2021.
correct. Yep.
Okay,
Well,
that's,
but Bill, I would say it has to be sooner than that, because doesn't the plat or the agreement with the developer ends at the end of this year, early next year, isn't it?
Early next year,
In
correct.
January 22.
Correct.
So I mean that they're gonna want their covenants approved. I don't know. I would imagine a few months before the end of the year, right?
Yeah, the covenants
Maybe.
would, so
At least
the
drafted.
covenants, yeah, the covenants would be drafted, and in this situation, I think they would probably be approved in the same timeline as like the developer's agreement and the final plat. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking, I think, to be safe, October.
Yeah,
mhm.
and I think only sooner than that, because if we throw them, a pretty big wrench in October,
Yeah.
they're not going to appreciate it. Developers, like, they're going to be like, wait, well, you doing what now?
Mhm.
So I think that we would like to get them something if we're considering this, much more in advance of that. And
Mhm.
the board's going to want to see it 2 or 3 times.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, but this is good because I was hoping that I wasn't gonna hear like next month. Because what I do want to do is be able to spend some time with the committee getting clear about what we do want to see out of housing developments, and so we need to have an internal discussion. So I'm good, but I do think something like late spring, maybe early summer, would be good. And if we could give that presentation and share the slides and then present again if necessary, I think that would work. Okay, I'm gonna bring us back here. So that's great. Are there other actions that we want to include, or anything that we would want to adjust on this energy section?
This is Steve. One question I had, I was scrolling down here about the Energy Star one. I think it was your last one.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that? What would be the vehicle for encouraging new homes to meet Energy Star home standards? Is that again possibly part of what we were just talking about?
That's my sense. I was gonna test that too. That maybe we could wrap it in there. I don't know of another hook yet.
I like the idea. It's just a little vague about who are we encouraging and who's doing the encouraging, but I like the element, maybe being another dimension of what we were just talking about in new homes.
Yeah, there's a little bit of, especially in the near term, there's a little bit of, I don't know, reality that we have to also take into account. The homes up here, if we're looking at Sundance, the homes are all going to be in that $450,000 to $750,000 type homes, executive size homes. And we're looking, in the building costs right now are about $210 to $220 a square foot, not Energy Star. So I just wonder, like, how feasible, how feasible it is at this point in time to push even further on the standards or the qualities of construction. I don't think it's a bad thing. I wonder that part of it, the reality part of it. And then secondly, if we put in there, every home must be an Energy Star home or something, or that must meet Energy Star home standards. I I just feel like the added cost, not just in materials, but all the added costs in us figuring out if it's Energy Star compliant or not. I was not too excited about this one earlier, and I guess I'm not too excited about it. I'm more for, if this comes out of one of the things that we think as we develop a policy a policy, I guess, to consider for the board, maybe this is one of the things that comes up from it, but I don't know if I like it here.
Okay.
My understanding is these builders, they kind of, they do it, they have a portfolio of the way they like to work, and that's how their efficiencies are in there. They do things certain ways, and we use these certain materials. And I don't know about this Sundance group and how custom, quote unquote, custom they might be. But yeah, I agree. It could really throw a wrench into somebody's plan if we're suggesting you need to build a different way.
Well, Sundance is just developing it. They're all going to have private builders building the homes.
So they're not like a Viridian or something like that.
No, not at all. Sundance is not going to build a house up there. They're just doing the land and selling the land to builders who are going to build on it.
Yeah, they do some building, but they would never be able to handle that kind of capacity to build all those homes.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, they build houses.
Yeah, I think they did that. The one in Oregon, they did that. I mean, pretty fancy stuff.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, I didn't know they were a construction company like that also.
I think they built some specs.
But that being said, there's no reason we can't try to, put some things in that are not possibly too burdensome. I mean, just even raising the awareness of, I think there's going to be a lot of dimensions to that, impervious surfaces and rain gardens and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh yeah, definitely. And they're going to be bigger houses. You probably want them to be energy efficient.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's hold on this one, and let's at least let's think about this in terms of the new development policy, for lack of a better word. So I'm going to wrap us up. So here's where we are right now.
Can I speak a few things real quick, Melissa?
Oh yeah, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Just letting you know that with the street lighting, with the LED, we're in the process of writing a policy. MG&E is trying to figure out what they want to do to convert to LED street lights. Recently, their supplier of their high pressure sodium fixtures actually discontinued those. So they're kind of being pushed into the LED world. I think, and I kind of think that they always thought that they were going to have the ability to get the high pressure sodium bulbs or fixtures. So they're trying to figure out what they're doing, and we're kind of crafting a policy with some things that we've seen with what they're doing. So that stuff is all kind of in the motion right now. And the policy that I've been writing and working with staff on, goes all the way to what sort of poles we're using, pole distances, just because there wasn't any sort of defined, quote unquote, defined usage for these sort of things. Something else on this energy thing that I'd like us to consider is one of the ones had something about a lighting ordinance. Could we add in like an adopt/update our light ordinance to decrease light wastage? I have a few ideas concerning that because our ordinance hasn't been updated in a while. And with the advent of LEDs, it's just something that should probably happen.
Yeah.
Also, something that's weird is that looking at that Monona plan action thing, they actually have in here utilize PACE financing. I didn't even know what that was when I read it earlier. I'm like, utilize me. I don't know what that means. Well, now we know what that means. So, with that even being said inside of this energy thing, I mean, we could even put something in, encourage businesses to utilize PACE financing. I don't know if we want to, sounds like
yes, I would love to include that. And where I wasn't sure was how we would do that, but it occurs to me, Bill, with your new title, working on economic development, this seems like there could be a role that you could play a little bit more, maybe, or there's at least a more clear avenue for getting in front of businesses with the opportunity for PACE financing.
That's correct. Yes. I was actually thinking about that because I have a meeting coming up with the chamber.
So PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy, and that's why the property has to be owned. That's so it has to be a building that is owned, and if it's a nonprofit, the nonprofit has to own their building. Otherwise, they can't take advantage of it. And there's been a long time effort to get this possible for residential, for homeowners, but it hasn't. There's some federal financing issues, and that hasn't, with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac mortgages, but PACE financing is available for the commercial sector for businesses that own their buildings.
Is the ownership required? Because are they putting the building up as collateral for the loan or something?
That's my understanding, is that how does it work? That the loan is attached to the property, and when the property changes hands, the loan stays with the property. So if they sell that building, whoever buys that building also takes on that loan. That's they're connected that way.
Right. They don't want somebody coming in and installing solar panels on a building that isn't owned, and because there's things like that can happen so that other people can get like the rebates and the money from putting on the solar panels, but they don't own the building it's attached to. And
this is a federal program.
PACE?
Yeah.
I don't really. I think it is. I think it is federal, but it's all local. It's all like local banks that can process PACE loans. But I think that it is sort of like, it is a federal program.
yeah, like out at the website, it says PACE Wisconsin. So I wonder if there's like a PACE Illinois.
Yeah, I think we may be able to take advantage of this. I'm just thinking of some avenues that we could help encourage businesses, and there's a lot of the downtown businesses that most likely will come in on a planned development. Well, that we've seen come in on a planned development, especially larger projects, will most likely be planned developments. And so as part of that review process, we may be able to require them to at least do a financial analysis on a PACE application with a local financer. But it's a hurdle for a business to get zoning, but if it's a good thing overall, it may not take a lot to convince them.
Bill, you don't know if Eric over at Latitude used the PACE financing in his project, do you?
I don't know off the top of my head.
He sent us that, which I don't remember off the top of my head, that finance document.
That's right.
Does he own that building now, or is it still a lands end leased thing?
He owns it.
He owns it, yeah.
Well, it'd be just nice to show an example. Hey,
yeah,
got one right here.
Yep. Michael, did you have other things to add to the energy section?
I mean, I don't know. It just depends on how in the weeds you want to get in terms of like because the Monona one just fired off a lot of stuff. There were things on there like, all municipal buildings need to be LEED Silver certified. I mean, you can really start to put in some real specific things if you wanted to. So it just depends on, we can do it on a second level or see what it looks like, but they kind of really came up with a lot of ideas.
Yeah. So I think I would say this is going to be an iterative process. And so I think what we could do is, add some more ideas, Michael, especially if ones that you think are relevant to our work, that could be done in, a 1 to 3 year time frame, that you think are realistic and that are specific enough. It's kind of like the SMART goal acronym, right? So SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So if you want to come up with those and add those to this energy section, I think that's great. We're going to have to go through at some point and get down to a reasonable list, but I think more ideas are better right now. So as you read through those other plans, please add them to this list.
Well, yeah, and especially if we're kind of now going to be focusing, or like how the general sustainability is kind of turned into a policy thing where we can put things in. It's like, because like the Monona one went as far as one of their things is ban idling vehicles.
Yeah, I saw that.
That is actually one of their actions. It's like, wow, okay. So, but you can put in a village policy. You can't let your truck run for more than 5 minutes, or what have you.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, John's already told us that he will melt if we go past 8 o'clock, and I think I'm seeing him start to melt. So I don't want that to happen. I'm gonna wrap this up, but we got a lot of great work done. So we heard from the county exec and from Kathy Kuntz on the county plan and how we can engage. We've already got some volunteers to attend that February 24th meeting, which is fantastic. So we'll start to connect a little bit more robustly with other neighboring communities. And we got further down the field on this energy piece and added some new ideas. So on our next call, we're going to start to tackle the next section, which is solid waste. And who drafted out that vision statement? Was that you, Bill?
Yeah, I put it together. It's
okay.
Pretty general, but
okay. Well,
some of that stuff in there today, I think I was typing in there because I was finding things because there wasn't anything in there. Yeah. Did you put stuff in there, Bill, in the solid waste section? Or I think you did the
vision. Any of the actions. I just put in the vision.
Yeah, I started filling in the actions because I noticed there wasn't anything there, and I was reading these plans, and I was just like, well, it wasn't assigned to me, but I'm just going to start typing things in here.
Which is great. I'm really glad that you did that, Michael.
I mean, I don't know if I was supposed to or not, but I was like, well, these are things we talked about. Sell compost bins, have a medication drop thing. I was like, there's nothing here. I'm just going to type it in.
So here's what I'll suggest from here on. On our next call, we're going to tackle solid waste. If you can review, like Michael's doing, if you can review other municipalities, their sustainability plans, or if you have a genuinely unique idea and you want to feature your unique idea, include it in this list of actions, and we'll talk about it on our next call. And we'll just continue to do this until we get through the entire report. So then on the following call, we'll talk about transportation and land use. And I think with that, I'll pause here. Any questions, comments, reflections before we adjourn?
You still want me to go mess around in here?
On the if you have, so Kevin, if you have suggestions, I would love you to include those.
Just
but
type
I think,
it in?
Yeah. I think you just type it in. That's fine.
I don't see any way to, track changes necessarily, but okay, I'll do that.
Okay, yeah, I'm not wed to the language at all, so feel free. And we'll come back again in a few weeks. And like I said, between now and then, please take a look at some other examples of what other communities are doing. You might even get some ideas when you show up to the February 24th call. So with that, Bill?
I was going to say, Melissa, or the group, maybe a suggestion to highlight your verbiage in a different ink color. Just so that we can track that next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good idea. Okay. Anything else for the good of the group? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Kevin. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor of adjourning at 8:05, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night, and look for some email for me about the February 24th call.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.